So I'm really looking forward to hearing about Tracy and her career. At this time, I would like to pass the program over to Jared F. Durkin, Assistant Dean in the College of Engineering, who will help moderate today's event. Take it away, Jared.
Thanks so much, Tammy, and to our partners and alumni as well. And Tracy, we're so excited to have you this morning. So I've got a couple of questions to ask that I think will be pretty broadly interesting to our audience here. And then I know, again, we'll get into some Q&A. So our first question for you is if you can bring us back, and funny enough, we're in the admission cycle right now. Folks are making decisions and they're deciding where to attend. So what brought you to URI and how did you decide to major in engineering?
So originally I decided to go to URI because it was one of the cheapest solutions for me at the time. And at the same time, they had a really good biomedical engineering team or department, I should say. I was looking for one that was kind of more centered towards mechanics and how like the electrical aspects of it versus just focusing on bioengineering. So that's kind of what really brought me to URI in the first place. I don't know. I can't remember the second question.
How did you decide to major in engineering? So that was probably even something admission. You'd probably been thinking about this as a pathway.
Yeah, so I knew that I wanted to do something in the medical field. Well, that's what I thought. I wanted to do something in the medical field. And I didn't want to do like nursing or be a doctor or anything. So I thought that the best way was I heard about biomedical engineering from a friend. And then I did a little summer internship at WP, because I'm from Worcester, Massachusetts. So I lived 5 minutes from it. And they had this awesome biomedical engineering department there. And I was like, that's the major I want to go with. And that's kind of how that journey happened.
That's great. And we're so proud to have had you come through our program and choose to join us. So tell me a little bit too about experiences at URI that helped prepare you, especially for your current role. And I want to get into questions about obviously your current role, but I'm thinking maybe helping folks understand how it led up there. I think they already have a sense of where you're working, but tell us about your undergrad experiences and how they've prepared you for your professional work.
So I did a lot of internships that helped kind of prepare me for, I would say, a leadership role. So I worked with Chuck, and he helped me a lot with finding a lot of different internships. Like I did the LSAM program, which was at WPI. I worked with a professor for like during the summers. So I did a lot of stuff like that, which was good for me because I learned how to do like individual and teamwork. And then I also decided to join NSBE, and NSBE was the biggest one for me, I would say, because I became president. I learned how to manage, how to not manage. I learned how to interview, talk to people, all those little things that I picked up from my group of friends. So, and then after that, I decided to go and travel to Spain for the IEP program. So that was also another thing that kind of added to that, me becoming more independent. And then realizing that I love traveling, which is a huge aspect of what I do now. So yeah, I had a lot of little things that just kind of, I guess, built up my confidence and my independence and taught me how to work with others in a professional environment, I would say. So
that's
yeah.
Great. That's a good experience. And
so
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's great. And I appreciate, I'm sure folks may be familiar with Chuck Watson, our Assistant Director of Diversity, who, I appreciate you referencing as a good connection for you there. So, of course, I think our viewers know today that you are with Amazon. And, I love, you're, literally demonstrating, visibly, some of the work that you're doing. But tell us how you got connected to Amazon, and then we'll talk more about what that role looks like.
So I actually had a weird, come to Jesus moment when I was in I think it's the sophomore year. I was doing biomedical engineering, and then I towards the end of the year, I just realized I did not want to be a biomedical engineer. I was more interested in industrial, but by then it was kind of, you might as well just finish your degree. Because you've already advanced so far. So I decided that I kind of wanted to pursue industrial engineer, but I thought that it would be best to do that later on in life. So randomly went to a NSBE conference, Amazon was there, but they were recruiting for area managers and operations. They weren't recruiting for engineering. So I decided to kind of take the leap and see how I could put my foot in the door at the company. So for the first 2 years of my career at Amazon, I was a manager in the operations fulfillment centers. So I was in charge of like 300 people on a daily basis, in charge of getting us the volume out, getting you guys the packages that everyone's so used to, like, those Amazon packages. So that's what I did for 2 years. And then I decided that I wanted to pursue what I originally signed up for with Amazon, which was industrial engineering, because we have a huge network of that here. So decided to apply for engineering, for project engineering, operations engineering, because I understood that I was able to apply everything I'd learned in operations, like how the actual systems work, and then, put it together with my engineering background. So that's kind of what led me to being an operations / project engineer now. Yeah. And
That's great. And I think
been doing it ever since.
I think that's great. And I also think that really highlights the versatility, right? That you graduated in a program that may not on the surface seem like it connects to what you're doing, but the fact that you as an engineer, period, has a tremendous opportunity and reach to anything that, period, just that title engineer opens up. So I think that's probably really interesting, especially for our current students, and some of whom may feel the same way, right, as they get towards the end, and may just want to take slightly different directions than what it seems like their program prepares them. Would you say that there was anything in your undergrad too, maybe it was experiences, especially outside the classroom, that you think helped kind of make that connection? Or perhaps Amazon was interested in you because of that for the specific job you were doing? Or you think as far as you were concerned, was that just because you had the title engineer and therefore you had the skills?
Well, I mean, just because you're an engineer does not mean that you carry the skills to do certain things. So I think personally for me, I had a lot of once again back to NSBE and like learning how to be in a leadership role. For me, that was the most impactful, because the minute I got into Amazon, I'm managing now 300 people on a consistent basis, like coming out of college. So like, I now have to learn how to be the leader in this group. So that was like the biggest, most impactful thing for me. That kind of led me in that direction. I realized earlier on that I'm more of a people person. So for me, I knew that my career was going to kind of lead me there. Somehow I was going to be in a people person oriented. And then like now I just transitioned from not doing operations, but I'm managing vendors, like installers, mechanical. So it's just, for me, it's all about management. And like, I know that that's the path that I'm good at, I should say. So, and NSBE was a big part of that for sure.
That's great. I love that. And tell us then a bit more about the specific role that you're in at Amazon. And if you also want to tell us a bit about what we're going to say typical day, but I know we were just talking that there may not be a typical day. So tell us a bit about your role and, perhaps what, kind of usual work or things that you may be doing.
Okay. So do you mind if I share my screen?
Please.
Okay. So let's see if it works. Can you guys see my screen?
Okay. We can see it.
So I'm an operations engineer / project engineer. We have 2 different titles for the same thing. I don't really know why, but so basically we're in charge of managing large scale warehouses, the distribution centers that pretty much get everyone their packages. Well, I'm in charge of all the MHE inside the distribution center. So that MHE means material handling equipment, the conveyance that feeds everybody, the conveyance that gets all the packages to and from where they need to go. So I work with a lot of different vendors. I work with different teams. So I work with like construction managers who are in charge of like the actual building themselves. I work with Amazon Robotics. They're primarily in charge of, like the storing capacity, which is a huge thing for us. I work with startup, and they're in charge of like keeping track of the money, because these are huge projects. Who else? there's just a lot of different teams that I work with. And essentially all of us come together and we basically get all these warehouses done and completed. Within the next 4 or 5 years, I think we're going to be in a different, my job is going to become a little different in terms of we're not going to be so much building new warehouses, because we're going to run out, we're going to get to a point where we don't really need to do that as much. I think it's going to be going back to the older sites and like, putting more automation, getting them more, I guess, more advanced with technology. So yeah, that's what I do for now. This is my current project. This is what it looks like. This is why I'm dressed like this. I'm actually in a construction zone at the moment. So got all my PPE and everything. Yeah, so we're building it right now. This is what it looks like. So this is what, these are examples of some of the stuff that I'm in charge of. So it's, once again, material handling equipment, the conveyance, the automation systems that we use in these warehouses. And Amazon, we pay a lot for what we do. So we have the top of the top types of equipment. So this is stuff that I'm looking at. So these are just examples of stuff that I'm in charge of. And then in this picture, you can see like the Amazon robotics field, like we work hand in hand. They can't get anything in or out of the building without me. And I can't store anything in the building without them. So in that aspect, people ask me about Amazon robotics. We're two different teams, but we're pretty much intertwined. Yeah, and once again, this is another example of an Amazon robotic, like it's a robot for Amazon robotics, but all the conveyance and everything that feeds the robot itself is all me. So once again, the relationship is pretty intertwined. And this is pretty much, yeah, that's a picture of a launch. So yeah, so that's me. On a daily basis, it depends on the time of the project that I'm at. So at the beginning of a project, I'm pretty much more of a project manager. So I'm in charge of making sure that, the vendors have what they need, the deliveries are on time, the schedules are in sync, all of that. So I'm pretty much just being a project manager. Now, as the project progresses, then I put on my engineering hat. I'm testing, I'm commissioning, I'm looking at quality, safety standards for all the little pieces of conveyance, making sure that all the automation, like if I turn it on, it actually turns on. Like you would be surprised the amount of times we go to launch a building and we just can't even turn the system on because somebody forgot to put like a little switch in. So stuff like that, I'm pretty much like the quality control person and the person who's ensuring that every little piece of conveyance, every little piece of everything that we have inside the building, it works properly and it's functioning well for my customer, my customer specifically is the operations teams that I give these warehouses to. It's not so much the actual customer. That's how I like to think about it. Yeah, so beginning, I'm a project manager, and then towards the end, I'm a project engineer. So, getting everything ready for launch, and then we're launching the building, and I'm still around because when things break, it's me and my installers who are pretty much going to solve the problems and figuring out what happened. So that's what I do, I should say.
Great. That's great, Tracy, and thanks for the audio visual tour of it as well. I think that's really instructive. So I see now too, and you may say it feels like a long time, or you may feel like it was just a second ago, but you finished about 5 years ago, and now we can see that you're pursuing your MBA at the University of Texas A&M. So tell us a little bit more about that, why you decided to pursue that program, perhaps as a complement or perhaps to open other opportunities, and how it's been working for you to work full-time and, again, going back to school.
It's been tough. Working full-time and then being in school has been very challenging, but I've actually found that I'm more motivated, I should say, I don't know, realizing you're by yourself, you just got to do it, you got to motivate yourself, it's kind of gotten me going. I don't know why, but it works out. And I decided to pursue the MBA in the first place, just primarily because I'm starting to think more business wise. And by that, I mean, I'm looking at the overall business of Amazon, right? And I'm saying okay, why do we make these decisions? Why do we do this? Why do we have this going on in this area? Or stuff like that. So I've kind of, for me, the MBA was just about me opening up my, I should say my scope, opening up my world, I guess, a little bit more and looking at things from a business perspective, because I have a lot of, if I, like, just within the role that I'm currently in, like there's a huge business to this, building warehouses. So that could be something that I could potentially, you know, end up in. So I'm trying to just expand my horizon, I should say, with the MBA. Yeah. And I thought it would be, you know, it's always a good thing to have.
More
Pursue
education
higher.
is never a bad thing. I agree with that. That's great, Tracy. And again, what an incredible, kind of path and set of opportunities and development of your career and advancements as well. So again, and knowing our audience, I know a lot of folks, are going to be at different stages in their undergraduate, maybe getting closer to finishing, maybe early on. So, take us back to that time, a little bit, and especially as you were, in the degree and you were, taking each step of the way, and the challenges, where the pitfalls were. So, tell us how you, really navigated that and how you overcame the hurdles. And again, I think because lots of folks are going to see you and say, this is somebody I want to be, when I get a couple of years out of school. So, how did you get through the undergrad? What were your tips and tricks?
Honestly, my friends got me through undergrad. My group of the network that I had around me, they were everything, So I just had a very good crew, and honest to God, I still have the same crew, even now in my in my adult life. And every single one of us are pushing each other. Like three of my friends we're all at Amazon. We're all in different roles, but like literally three of my closest friends that I was in school with undergrad, we're all working at Amazon. So for me, my network was everything. They were there for me when it came down to, like those study sessions or towards like motivating, when you're not feeling very motivated. And yeah, I got through undergrad through my friends. I will say that. And then also my professors and Chuck. Chuck, my professors, and the NSBE network that I had already developed as well. That was pretty huge for me. So yeah, the network that I had around me was everything.
That's great. And any advice to, again, maybe somebody, folks out there are in their first year or even deeper, and may feel like, I'm having some trouble, maybe I've made it, obviously folks here are probably at least through their first semester, and maybe a little bit later, but, again, they are finding challenges, they're having any difficulty. So, maybe they hadn't, created that network yet. So any other advice you think you would give to folks, as they kind of continue through that, you think, especially as you kind of look back and say, okay, the friend groups, the faculty, and, obviously joining the student orgs, anything else you think, that you'd say to them to kind of help encourage them to keep at it?
I think honestly, for me, one thing I think I did well was that I focused heavily on school, making sure that you have that GPA and the good grades and everything. But to me, it wasn't like all that I did, right? So I was looking for internships. I was looking for as many little opportunities that I could squeeze myself in. And I feel like a lot of times students focus so heavily on just getting that GPA that they forget that, like, when you go to an interview for, especially for like your first job, they're going to say like, what else did you do besides have good grades? Like, what else can you bring to the table besides the fact that yes, you got A's, and so that's the biggest advice I can give undergrad, I should say, is like, don't just like focus on school. It's important, get the good grades, but like do other things, have a more robust resume, and it can be anything, volunteering, internships, or just any opportunities that you can find is the biggest thing, I would say, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, it does. I think that's gold for especially our students out there. So Tracy, too, again, thinking about some of those folks, and you think about your transition from college and into the professional field. So, what advice would you give folks, especially as they're maybe wrapping up their undergrad and obviously really getting into that professional job search?
The advice I would give like a senior.
Sure.
um, hmm, don't. Okay, when you graduate, the first job you're gonna get is gonna be entry level. So it's good to be very, it's good to be picky about, what company you want to work for, but just understand that, especially in today's generation, like a lot of my friends, like the job that they started working or the company that they started working in like 2 years ago, it's probably not the same. A few of them have already transitioned to other ones. So, just be willing to pick up experience. You don't have to be, uh, I don't know what the right word is, but as choosy about your first experience. It just needs, your first job, it just needs to be about getting experience and putting your foot in the door that will, enable you to continue on. So that's the best piece of advice I can give for graduating people. Like, just try to pick up any experience that you feel like will take you to where you want to go, or a path that you want to go, versus like being very, I don't know, choosy or too choosy, I should say.
The first job maybe doesn't need to be the happily ever after. What do we think about
Yes.
that? I think you're right. I think you're right on that. And anything too about that, process, and I don't know if you experience that, but, sometimes folks, and it can be timing, right? It can be, things that really have nothing to do with you and your accomplishments and your resume. But I know sometimes folks get frustrated, right? Or, you start maybe seeing your peers, saying, oh, I got employed, and maybe you're still the person. And I don't know where you fell on that, but you probably saw, folks who obviously were getting hired at different points as you were all going to graduate. So any advice around that as well? And, kind of looking back and saying, it'll all work out, my group, we all made it, right? And everybody moved through. So anything on that side of it, as folks are kind of, dealing with that, and maybe the internal, kind of dialogue that happens with that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you just have to kind of understand that like your time will come when it comes. Like, regardless of your GPA, you will find a job, right? You'll find something. It might take you a little longer, but it's gonna be okay. I was lucky. I actually got hired by Amazon in September of like senior year. So I pretty much went through the whole senior year knowing that I was employed. So I was kind of in a lucky situation, but for me, I would just, it's about, and then during that time, if you are one of those people who's kind of waiting a little bit longer, the things that I always say is like, hone in on your skills. So like, become really good at interviewing, get your resumes to the point where it looks great, like do everything that you can so that, like as you're continuously like checking, as you're continuously looking, like it will, you'll be in a better spot when you finally find that company, or you find those people that you vibe with, or whatever it is, or the opportunity. So yeah. I just had a little different experience, so I don't know if I'm the best to give advice about the process of waiting and going through that.
That's okay. And I still think that that's right, though. I think it's the persistence, and it's, keeping your head up. So I think that's great, Tracy. Can you tell us too, as you transitioned then, graduated, got into the professional field, any resources, anything else you did? Obviously, the college setting has so many different, support services and clubs and organizations and, point people and things. So as you transition out, what did that kind of look like, as you kind of established yourself as a professional? Were there specific resources? Were there groups? Or, how did you even make connections just within now your new, kind of professional field, your new colleagues?
I struggled with that, honestly. So, the thing that I learned early on, for example, like I'll give you an example. Like I learned in college and throughout life, you're taught about, just regular stuff. But like, I mean, you're taught about like school stuff, but you're not really taught about like adult stuff. Like, for example, money. I struggled with things like how to, save, how to make sure that, like every paycheck you get, obviously handle all your bills and stuff, but then like also like, put some away, things like that. So I struggled, and it took me a few months, and I should say up to a year, to really discover like what I like, how I should be an adult, I should say. or what adulting is like. I also like my coworkers became a big network for me. So obviously moving from Rhode Island to Dallas was a pretty big transition. So my coworkers just kind of became like my network. And I still had the same network as well, like for my undergrad. So we were going through the same struggles together. And it was nice kind of just hearing like, yeah, I just like opened a bank account and like now I'm saving. Do you even know what a 401k is? And then, we're asking each other these type of questions. So I would say, it doesn't hurt if you're in your senior year, like start trying to figure out like small aspects like that. Like, okay, I'm going to, when I start getting this, a paycheck, I'm going to, of course, handle all my bills and my responsibilities, but at the same time, I'm going to aim to save. I'm going to aim to blah, blah, blah. I'm going to like, or you can start looking into like things like 401k, I don't know, the adult things. Because I feel like that's something that we miss in the college life because you're not really focused on any of that, but it's important for you for the rest of your life. So yeah, that's what I would advise.
Sage advice. I love that. So I've got a little bit more time for me to ask you questions, and then Tammy's going to help open it up for Q&A. But obviously this past year, was challenging, and I think, maybe personally so for some folks, and, no matter what, I think the, pandemic touched us all. So, tell us, especially on the professional side, obviously we, and you probably could even imagine some of the challenges on the academic, but at least from your experience on the professional side, how were you able to kind of navigate that? I have no doubt you probably had to keep doing what you were doing. My bet is you probably weren't home, or probably sheltering in place, if, for very long, given the work Amazon does. And at the same time, what do you think you learned about yourself during that period? And I guess it's still going on to some degree.
So I work in the one company that kind of did really well during the pandemic. And because of that meant I was an essential worker. With us, with people ordering more online, people ordering more from Amazon, that meant that like my job especially is more vital than ever. We have to open up these new warehouses to just keep up with the demand. Now it's gotten to a point where literally like we've projected the amount of buildings that we have to open all the way up to 2024. So we literally have a plan of like what so stuff like that. So during COVID, it was difficult for us, especially my team, because we were still traveling. Obviously, we cut back a lot. So there was a lot of, if you don't need to be on site, you're not on site. So, and that's still the same case now, like there's weeks where I'll say like, okay, I can handle all my responsibilities this week at home, like through emails and video calls and all this stuff. And I just don't need to be traveling. So in that aspect, I will say like we've cut back travel. Usually before pandemic, my job required travel like about 70%. Now we're about like 40, 50. So we're still doing a good deal, but at the same time, we're definitely more mindful. I forgot the second part of your question.
And tell us, I guess, how it, kind of impacted you. I mean, it certainly sounds like you've kept a positive attitude, kept your head up or down as needed and focused on what you had to do. But, how do you think maybe it's helped you perhaps in positive ways, kind of grow and develop, if you felt that was true for you?
For me, I think it helped me kind of be more mindful about my work-life balance, because I realized that there was a time where I was traveling too much. I was overworking. I was, like it just, I was tired. I didn't have a very good work-life balance where like I would be out on a Saturday, maybe at a brunch, and then I'm still like looking at answering emails and, stuff like that. So it kind of opened up my world to the fact that I need to create a balance. I can't be in work zone all the time. I have to be able to say, okay, it's 8 p.m. Like, I don't have to look at my email. It'll be fine. We can handle it in the morning. So that has been the biggest change for me. And it's kind of like, it's opened up my world. It's freed a lot of the pressure that I was putting on myself. It's been everything for me. Work-life balance. It feels good.
Good for you.
Yeah, that was the biggest impact that COVID had on me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's important perspective for everybody, right? I know it's tough for all of us to turn off. Thank you. So last two questions on a little bit of a lighter side, and then we're going to open it up here. So are there any fun facts that we may not know about, especially working at Amazon, that you can share with us?
Well, I recently learned, and I don't know if this is accurate, but when you go to Amazon and like you put something in your cart, once you do that, like we automatically like the system will automatically figure out what warehouse is closest to you, and then we'll like have it like pretty much picked out for you. That way, the minute you put that that you submit, like you purchase it, like it's already going through the system. That's how we're pretty much getting it closer to you, or like as quickly as we do to you. So that's a fun fact. So if you have a bunch of stuff in your cart that's just sitting there, like Amazon is just pretty much just waiting for you to
Moving it.
click purchase, and it just goes through. I don't know any other fun facts. I think that was pretty much it.
That's a pretty neat one, I think. I think that's pretty interesting. So, and especially from your perspective, kind of managing the movement, of items. I think that's interesting for sure. And finally, maybe a little nostalgic too, right? Tell us what you may miss most about URI, or maybe what you reflect on, hopefully happily from your time with us.
I just miss. I know this sounds funny because I miss the lack of like adult responsibility, I should say. Like, as funny as that sounds, like, just like I was responsible for going to class, getting my grades like on point and everything. But other than that, that's pretty much all you have to care about in college. So I miss that. And then I just miss my network of friends, I should say, and, all the people the groups and the people that I met. So yeah, that's the biggest one.
Thank you. And Tracy, what a pleasure. And I really appreciated personally being able to talk to you. We are just so proud year after year how folks have done so well, how they grow and develop, and all the exciting journeys and possibilities. I have intimately aware of how challenging it is day to day, but so exciting to see, and I know it's been some years, but even in that 5-year period, the incredible growth and development that you've had in your career sounds like that you would say personally and professionally, and how well, if I can paraphrase that, your opportunities and resources at URI helped you get there. So we are so grateful to have you. And I am now going to turn it back over to Tammy and Michaela to share you with the rest of our group here, who I know probably has some great questions. So thanks so much. And Tammy and Michaela, back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Tracy, this is the second time that I've had the pleasure of being in your company and hearing your advice. And I can't thank you enough for sharing some of the same sentiment across the board with our students about your comments about the GPA and how it's really more important to have that well-rounded experience, right? That's truly what our employers are looking for, but especially your comments on leadership. So we talk about that a lot in my conversations with students, and how those leadership skills are so important to have, but how they transfer over into your full-time career. So always appreciate that advice. Thank you for sharing that again. What we're going to do now is we're going to turn it over to some questions. There's actually a couple of questions, or a few questions already in the chat, and I want to encourage our attendees to put more questions in the chat for Tracy. She's a great resource, incredible. So we're going to turn it over and start giving some questions to you from the audience. What I also want to just say is that we may not be able to get to all of the questions today, but we'll try our best to. And I'm going to actually lean on Michaela right now to help me to get some of those questions out to you. So Michaela, why don't you go ahead and start that?
Sure thing. All right, so Tracy, we have a question from Sigrid, and she said, impressive career trajectory. Tracy, to what do you attribute this confidence you developed to take that gigantic leap into a completely different field, into a management position, your can-do attitude? She also said NSBE president leadership role, maybe leaving your comfort zone by going abroad, taking charge, becoming independent. Anything else?
So, why did I have the confidence? Honestly, I've always kind of been the person, like I've never really been scared to move around and kind of, I don't know, try new things. So that's kind of the attitude that I had when I was looking for jobs or when I was pursuing a professional career. For me, if I feel like I can, or if I can do it, if I can do something, or if I feel like I can learn how to do something, then I don't really, I guess I have no problem just jumping in and, pursuing that. So that's kind of what's happened. That's kind of what happened with me with NSBE, and then going into Amazon, and then now being, an operations engineer. I think I can do something, and then I try it. And that's kind of just how I've always operated. I don't know where the confidence came from. I don't know, genetics maybe. Yeah, my upbringing, a factor, but not sure.
And it's great that, you took that step or realizing when you were in school that, I want to do something different. And, it takes a lot of courage, because I think a lot of people think when they pick a major, they have to stick with it. And so it's great that, you open your eyes and realize what you wanted to do. We have another question from Nat Jenkins. He is College of Engineering, class of 1974. He lives in Hampton, Virginia, and said they have an Amazon warehouse facility being constructed on Mercury Boulevard. A former Kmart store is being retrofitted. Are you also overseeing that construction?
So the current one that I'm doing is in Nashville. So I'm on the team that makes the moneymakers. So by moneymakers, I mean, they're the huge, huge distribution centers that have like 5 levels and a lot of conveyance and automation and stuff like that. So because of that, that means that I have to focus on that one project for 9 months. So I wouldn't be able to do 2 of those big ones at the same time. But my team is most likely doing the one in Virginia for sure. It's in Hampton, Virginia? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, I think I do know the person who's in charge of that one.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your work.
Thank you.
We have a question from Sarah. She said, can you go in depth about the internships you did during your undergrad, along with your experience being a part of the Spanish IEP and traveling abroad?
So during undergrad, I worked with the professor's name slips my mind. He was one of my internships, but I will try to remember it by the end of this. He was in the biomedical engineering department. I will try to remember it by the end of this. I did one internship with him, and then I worked in the LSAMP program, where I worked in a bio lab at WPI because it was the closest. It was the closest university to my house. So I did that during a summer. And then, those are the 2 internships that I had during undergrad. And then the Spanish IEP, when I was abroad, I worked for a company called, it was called the 3P Pharmaceuticals. And I was kind of like, I helped translate all their medical documents to English when I was doing that. So that was it pretty much forced me to learn Spanish doing that. So those are the experiences that I had working undergrad.
Great. Sigrid said, was it Kunal Mankodaya in BME?
No, I will remember his name. I will. I feel really bad because he was such a great professor.
No worries at all. We have a question from Ken. What kind of company training program?
Basio, yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Good memory. Ken asked, what kind of company training programs? What kind of company training programs do new hires go through, and is there a continuing program?
So when you first, there's two, I've been in two departments within Amazon. So I'll talk about the two different departments and what the onboarding for both of them looks like. So in operations, they take you in and then they give you training. You're pretty much a shadow for other operational leaders for at least 3 months. So you get in there, you're working in a warehouse, you're on your feet all day long, dealing with different issues, different problems, making sure that the orders get met. You have a certain amount of delivery or boxes or whatever that needs to get out that day. So you're pretty much just running around trying to get that done. So the whole training for that just was kind of like shadowing. I had mentors that made sure that I hit my deliveries and that I learned the process. And I did that for 3 months. When in operations engineering, it was also shadowing as well, but we do more in-depth training. So you learn about systems, right? So we put you through training where you learn okay, you're going to be dealing with these type of operations. You're going to be looking at mechanical issues, electrical issues, software issues. It's more in depth, they talk about the different systems that we use. They go through all the little details. And then you're also doing a lot of shadowing. So you're usually, when you get onboarded, you're usually a support engineer. For each project that we have, especially these money makers, we have 2 engineers. So there's a lead and there's a support. You usually, when you come on, you're a support and you're just pretty much helping the lead engineer with everything that they need. So that's how the trainings go. And we do have continuous trainings as well. Whatever someone wants to learn, you can find it. And we're always offering yeah, okay, I'll walk you through this more. I'll show you how to use AutoCAD. I'll show you how to do blah, blah, blah. So we do have a lot of continuous programs as well. It just depends on what you want to learn.
Great. Demetria said, what was it like to change focus from biomedical engineering to systems in management at Amazon, and what made you decide to do that?
I felt like I could do so. One of the things I like about URI is that they focus on mechanical biomechanics, and there's a lot of electrical classes that you take with biomedical engineering. I feel like that kind of prepared me for what I do now. I look at mechanical systems all day and electrical, the electrical aspects of them. So, and a lot of the stuff that I do right now, I have also learned. So for this role right now, it's kind of all about being able to problem solve. And if you don't understand something, you ask questions, you take the time to learn it until you get it. And then you that's how it operates in my team, I should say. So changing the focus for me from biomedical engineering, I pretty much changed my focus when I was in undergrad in sophomore year. I knew I wasn't going to be a biomedical engineer, but I knew that I could use some of the skills that I learned during that and kind of help me get to the industrial engineering phase or the systems management that I do now. And then also being an operations manager in the beginning helped a lot with the management perspective. So, I knew how to be a leader. I knew how to manage teams. I knew how to manage teams and deliver results. I knew how to dive deep into issues. I'm using some of the Amazon leadership principles as I'm talking. I knew how to earn trust, which is another big one, being able to talk to people and having respect for others is huge. So yeah, a lot of the little experiences that I've developed that I've had over the years have kind of helped me get to where I am now, I should say.
That's awesome, Tracy. We have a question from Mackenzie. She said, looking at those photos of the new center you and your team were constructing, was wild. Do you ever balk at the responsibility of managing so many people or having to give the final okay that everything is working as it should be, quality assurance wise?
Yes. Especially, yes. At the beginning, I was like, oh, okay, so I'm in charge of making sure that all the systems work. Okay, that's great. That, we should be able to do that. And then I remember the first launch I had, we literally went to turn on the system and the start button wouldn't work. And I was like, And I had like a whole team of like operations people, like on the launch day, there's like associates, there's press, because it's a building that you're opening, and like you have this responsibility of making sure that like, the first package has to like go through the system and somebody has to pack it, and it's like a whole ordeal, and then we couldn't turn the system on. And it's just like, it's like, oh, call Tracy, like she has to figure out what happened. So yes, I bucket the responsibility of my job a lot. And there's times where things just don't work. And I do my best to get things where they need to be, but things happen in life. So that's something that I've had to learn to be okay with, like you're responsible for a lot, but at the same time, like, things happen, So.
Right. Sometimes things are out of your control. That's really impressive. You should be so proud of yourself. Melissa asked a question. In general, what advice would you give to others wanting to move into a management role? Is there any advice you might have for your female peers in particular who may be looking to do this?
Advice to move into a management role. If you want to be a manager, I think it's good to have conversations with other managers and try to pick up on like some of the good things that you see from different types of leadership skills. I'm trying to give me a second. I'm trying to think of the best verbiage this is a good question.
Yeah, we can come back to it if you want. We do have another question from.
Yeah, let's come to it as I think about it more. Sure. I want to give a good answer.
Yeah, absolutely. We can close it out with that if you want. So Anaki says, the mission of the IEP is to help students to become global engineers. Amazon is one of the most important global companies. What skills do you consider that a global engineer needs to have? And the second part is, do you feel that participating in the IEP program gave you an advantage over students that did not participate in that kind of international program?
I don't know if it gave me an advantage specifically, I should say. I think in this current role that I do, I travel a lot. So for me, the whole like IEP with the whole traveling and moving around a lot, I got very comfortable with, being mobile, I should say. I got very comfortable with that. What skills do you consider that a global engineer needs to have? You need to be able to talk to others and get your point across. And also you need to be able to earn the trust of other people. You need to be able to be a team player. Those are like the most important things that you can, because if you know how to communicate well with others, then you can get a lot of things accomplished. I've seen engineers who will be the smartest person in the room, and they just don't know how to convey their message in an appropriate. They don't know how to communicate well with others. So then their message gets mixed along the way. So I think being able to communicate well with other people, and then being able to work with other people in a teamwork environment, it's a very big skill. Those are the skills that you need to have to be a global engineer, or engineer in general, I should say.
That's great. I love the way you answer that. And I think it's so important about communication. We don't have any other questions except for that last one from Melissa. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to enter in the chat or just ask Tracy. We do have a couple more minutes. So yeah.
So I think I can dive into the Melissa thing. So I'll answer the second one first. Any advice you might have for female peers? I think for females, I think you need to, one thing that I learned is that I learned that sometimes you don't always have to be, like, when I first started, I felt like there would be times where I wasn't being heard. And I just felt like I had to be sometimes the loudest person in the room. And then I learned that sometimes being the loudest person in the room does not mean that your message is getting conveyed in the best way. So for me, I learned, one, to speak up. If I have something to say, speak up. And then also the other thing that I worked on was my communication, making sure that whatever I was communicating, I was I was conveying it in the best way that I could. And, so for females specifically, like, speak up. That's the biggest one. Like, sometimes we don't voice our opinion because we feel like it won't be heard, but speak up. And then for anyone wanting to move into a management role, just, pursue a management role, but like also work on the skills that you'll need for being a manager. So, communication, being able to like dive into issues and not just having tunnel vision on certain things. Cause that happened to me sometimes, where I get so stuck on like one topic and I can't move on from it. But being a manager, you have to be able to see the bigger picture sometimes, and pushing yourself back and saying, okay, this is like the actual picture, and it's not just this one little thing. So yeah, those are the two things that I think are the best.
Those are great tips. We have one more question. And Alfred did mention that he probably has a huge stack of items at the Amazon warehouse from putting things in his cart. And I felt the same way. I have so many things in my shopping cart. But one question from Sigrid is, how can it logistically happen that Amazon packages that you did not order end up on your doorstep? And it happened to her with espresso coffee.
That one I don't know. I do not know how that would happen, but it was probably more on the delivery end. So we have a lot of different warehouses. Like, by the time that your product actually gets to you, it's gone through 3 warehouses, right? So so the one I'm building now, that's the moneymaker. That's the one where we do all the storing, all the picking, and like putting the product in the box. That's where all that magic happens. But from there, it goes to another warehouse. And that warehouse, that's where like all the delivery drivers will go in, pick up their boxes. And so like there's a lot of areas, or I guess spaces, where there can be room for error. So that one, I wouldn't know logistically how that would happen, but it would happen probably after it left the first warehouse, which is, where they put the name of the person on the package and all that stuff. So yeah.
Yep. And I'll just say, I've had, I don't know, Amazon, messed up an order or something, and they've always been so easy to work with. And like the next day they just sent a new one, and just really, really good customer service. So
it's one of our leadership principles, customer obsession. So we're all for it.
I think that's all we have for questions. Paul did say to Tracy, congratulations on a great start to your career and best of luck going forward. And I think many of us, or all of us, can say the same thing. This is really great. Tammy, I'll pass it back over to you if you want to close it out. Thanks. You, Tracy.
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. And Tracy, again, this is the second time I've had the pleasure of your company and hearing your advice and sharing in your conversation and your story, and it just gets better every time. So it has been such a pleasure having you here back again virtually on campus to share your story with our audience today. And a special thanks to Jared Abdurkin today for serving as our host moderator. We really appreciate both of you being an important part of the URI community. And to those of you that are on the call today, thank you for joining us and taking time out of your busy day to do so. We also are really excited to announce, and Tracy will appreciate this, Kenny Suleiman, class of 2016, will be our next speaker for the Engaged Alumni Spotlight series. Tracy will make sure that you get the link so you can join. I think he was going to try to join us today as well. Just so that you all know, Kenny is currently a product manager for Google. And please mark your calendars for April 28th at noon to hear all about Kenny's career. Watch for registration information coming soon. So in the coming days, for those of you in the audience, you'll receive a brief survey about this program. Please complete the survey and share your thoughts on today's program so that we can bring more of this kind of great information to you in the future through the Engaged Alumni Spotlight series. So Tracy, once again, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We know you are a very busy person, so we appreciate your time incredibly. And
we're hiring, so if anyone's interested in my position, being a project engineer, go ahead and, hit me up. I'd love to have more engineers.
And thank you so much for that pitch. It's a great time of year to be pitching jobs to our engineers, so we really appreciate that. So once again, thank everybody on this call for joining us today. We want to wish you a very safe day, and please take care, and we hope to see you again on April 28th to hear all about Kenny and his career at Google. So thank you, everyone. Take care, and
Thank you,
bye-bye.
everyone. Have a great day.